Let's bring Geralt of Rivia into the world of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, starting with the race, I was very tempted to go with a shifter because they have a wild hunt shifter, which just fits for the naming convention, but I think we're going to get a little more use out of going with a variant human. This gives us a free skill right off the bat, so we're going to grab Intimidation because that just kind of fits. Then we get to choose a feat, and I want to make sure that we get some of the magic, which is known as signs in the Witcher series, into our playstyle very early on. And Geralt is able to shield himself very effectively using magic. Not to mention that variant humans only get 1 point into 2 different stats when it comes to their racial bonuses, and that's going to be a little lacking and make it a little harder for us to do this build. So we're going to choose a half feat. This means that we're choosing a feat that improves 1 stat by 1 point. So we're going to choose Aberrant Dragon Mark. Witchers are actually really known to respect dragons. They hunt plenty of monsters, but they consider dragons to be sentient beings, so they try and show them some respect. So I feel like this could work. The Aberrant Dragon Mark feat is something that I should probably use way more often. It allows us to dive into the Sorcerer's spell list. We get 1 cantrip and 1 spell, and our Constitution is actually what we use for the spellcasting modifier. This feat increases our Constitution by 1 point, which is going to be super helpful, but we're still not throwing a ton of points into Constitution when we get to the stats. So with that in mind, we're going to choose spells and cantrips that are still going to be very useful even if we don't have the stats to back it up. So the cantrip we'll grab is Booming Blade. We just want to hit pretty strong with our sword. This relies solely on our melee weapon attack and then just boosts up the damage of it. Then as far as the actual spell, well, we already mentioned that he shields himself with magic. He doesn't actually use a physical shield. So instead we'll take the shield spell. This allows us to boost up our armor class by 5 points whenever we cast it. And speaking of casting that spell, you get some additional benefits from the Aberrant Dragon Mark when you cast it using this feature. So when you cast Shield using this feature, you get to expend 1 hit dice. If you roll an even number, you get temporary HP equal to what you rolled. And that's especially useful considering you're casting Shield, which is something very defensive, so that can really save you in a dire situation. But if you happen to roll an odd number, you actually deal damage to a creature within 30 feet of you equal to that number that you rolled, which is also pretty helpful because you're at least damaging an enemy. But it should be noted that if no other creatures are in range of that 30 feet, you wind up taking that force damage. So make sure you use this ability wisely. Speaking of abilities, let's jump into the ability scores. When it comes to those stats, we're gonna have a point spread that looks like this. We made sure to just have 14 in dexterity because we regularly see Geralt using more of a medium armor, and usually that maxes out as a +2 from your modifier of dexterity. And we want to be more focused on strength and have a decent amount of wisdom. Then when it comes to a starting class, we're going to go ahead and jump into Ranger. Rangers are very focused on being able to hunt down certain creatures, and that seems pretty fitting for this build. And when you become a ranger, you get proficiency in all weapons and light and medium armor, as well as shields, but you're not going to use those. You get saving throws in strength and constitution, and you get to choose a few skills. We'll go ahead and take athletics, perception, and survival. Then at first level of ranger, you get a few features, but we're going to be taking the optional features that were added later to improve the ranger. You could take favored enemy, but we're going to take favored foe, the optional replacement. So when you hit a creature, you can use this feature to improve the amount of damage you're dealing to it. It's very similar to the Hunter's Mark spell, but there are a few specific details that are going to wind up helping us out. 1, it's not going to take up any known spells, so you can have an extra spell in your arsenal. 2, this can automatically activate as you hit a creature. It doesn't take your bonus action, meaning we can use our bonus action for other things. 3, the damage is only 1d4 instead of a d6, which Hunter's Mark would grant, but that does upgrade to the d6 as soon as you hit 6th level in this class. And while you do still have to concentrate on it like you would with Hunter's Mark, you don't have to use any spell slots to cast it. You can just use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. The big downside here is that using it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus is kind of tough, because if you're fighting a bunch of enemies and you're taking one down and you move on to the next, you don't get to just move it with your bonus action like you would with Hunter's Mark. You have to waste an entire use of this feature. But overall, I think the trade-off is solid, and I think it's worth it. The other feature you get at first level would be Natural Explorer, but we're going to swap that out for Deft Explorer instead. This gives us a couple languages to learn, and we get expertise in one skill that we know. So we're going to get expertise in Perception, because that's generally one of the most helpful skills in any D&D game. Then at second level of Ranger, you get a Fighting Style, and you're usually using a long sword, but no shield. So with that in mind, we're going to take the Defense Fighting Style. This allows us to boost up our armor class by 1. Also at second level of Ranger, we get some spell casting. And remember how we don't have to waste our bonus action on Hunter's Mark anymore? Well, let's go ahead and make use of it in other ways. We often see Geralt sort of wave his hand over his sword, make it start glowing, and we can use this idea to improve our strike with that weapon, making it magical in some way, shape, or form. So there's 2 spells we can use for this, and both of them would use our bonus action. Under the expanded spell list for Rangers, we can get Searing Smite, dealing an extra 1d6 fire damage on the strike, and if the enemy you hit with that strike actually fails a Constitution saving throw, they get lit on fire, taking an additional 1d6 fire damage, and then they have to continue to make Constitution saving throws to put out the fire, or they can actually waste an entire action to do so. The other good use of our bonus action to boost up our damage is going to be with Zephyr Strike. This allows you to boost your walking speed by 30 feet when you go ahead and make a strike with a melee weapon, pretty much allowing you to dash forward and slash with that sword, while also dealing an extra 1d8 force damage. And on top of all of that, you also have advantage on that strike. Then we do have instances of you talking to your horse Roach, so we're going to grab Animal Friendship, and there's a special sign / piece of magic that allows you to basically set a magical trap, so we're going to grab the spell Snare. At third level of Ranger, you get Primeval Awareness, but we're going to swap that out as well, because Primeval Awareness is pretty borderline useless. It allows you to spend a spell slot to see if there's any types of creatures within a mile of you, like if you want to know if there's a dragon or elemental nearby, but it doesn't tell you where they are. You're just like, hey, there's an elemental within a mile of me. That's it. What are you going to do with that? So instead, we're going to take the optional feature, which gives us a few more spells to cast, most of them dealing with nature and animals. Also at third level of Ranger, you choose a Ranger Conclave, which is a Ranger subclass, and you are trying to hunt monsters, which means we would probably choose either Monster Slayer or Hunter. But personally, I like Hunter better. Monster Slayer has a bunch of limits and what they can do, but Hunter is a bit more straightforward and a little more customizable. And when you become a Hunter, you get the feature Hunter's Prey. And then you get to choose one of 3 options for what the Hunter's Prey is going to be. But instead of highlighting all of them, let's just focus on what we're taking. And we're going to grab Colossus Slayer. This one's very straightforward, easy to use constantly, and it's just awesome. It allows you to deal an extra 1d8 of damage when you hit a creature with a weapon attack. And that extra damage only kicks in if they're at less than their maximum health, which is gonna happen pretty consistently, but you can only deal that damage once per turn. Then at fourth level of Ranger, we get an ability score improvement. So let's just go ahead and boost up our strength by 2 points, because that's gonna matter the most. Then at fifth level of Ranger, we get extra attack, meaning we can attack twice per attack action. Also at fifth level of Ranger, we get access to second level spells. And if you want a bit more consistency with the boost in your damage to your sword, you can also grab Magic Weapon, having a continuous enchantment on that sword. Then at sixth level of Ranger, your favored foe increases to 1d6 of damage, so now it's completely on par with Hunter's Mark, and you get another feature from your Deft Explorer. It's called Roving. It allows you to have a climbing and swimming speed equal to your walking speed. Then at 7th level of Ranger, you get another feature from being a hunter, and this is a defensive tactic that you get to choose. I'm just going to go with Steel Will. This makes it so you have advantage against being frightened, which seems pretty spot on for Geralt. You're not really afraid of much. Then at 8th level of Ranger, you get an ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and max out that strength. Now it's time to do a multi-class. We're not going to get a bunch of other stuff from Ranger specifically that'll help us out, so we're going to jump over to Fighter. When you become a fighter, you get to choose a fighting style, and we're going to grab Dueling. Dueling makes it so when you're attacking a creature with a weapon with one hand, you deal an extra 2 points of damage. Now, if you're using a longsword, you can wield it with 2 hands, and when you do so, you upgrade from a D8 to a D10 of damage. But the chance of an extra 2 points of damage is not as good as an extra solid 2 points of guaranteed damage from this fighting style. And frankly, with our current gear, we don't really have anything else that would be as useful anyways. So dueling is really our best option because we can't take defense again. Also at first level of fighter, you get second wind, allowing you to regain some hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level as a bonus action, which is making it even more useful that you have that bonus action free instead of using it on Hunter's Mark constantly. At second level of fighter, you get action surge, so now you can have 2 actions in a single turn, once per short or long rest. And then at third level of fighter, you get a martial archetype, and this is a fighter subclass, and you're pretty consistently riding your horse Roach, so we're gonna go ahead and take Cavalier. This is very focused on being a fighter on horseback. It gives you a bonus proficiency, so we're gonna grab animal handling so you can better deal with your horse, and it gives you the feature Born to Saddle. So if you have to make a saving throw to make sure you don't fall off of your horse, you have advantage on that saving throw. And if you happen to fall off your horse anyways, you can still land on your feet as long as you're not falling more than 10 feet. And finally, mounting or dismounting your mount only costs you 5 feet of movement. Then the last feature you get from Cavalier is Unwavering Mark. So when you hit a creature with an attack, you can mark them until the end of your next turn. And that creature then has disadvantage on any attack rolls against anyone other than you. And if that creature still damages any creature other than you, you get to make a special melee attack against them. And you can do that as a bonus action on your next turn, giving you even more things to do with your bonus action. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your strength modifier. Then at 4th level of fighter, you get an ability score improvement, and we're going to take another feat. We're going to take Magic Initiate and dive into the Druid spell list, partially because we have Wisdom as our highest casting stat, but also because it has all the other spells we need to replicate most of the signs in The Witcher. So we're going to grab Gust, allowing us to push with a gust of air, which happens very regularly in The Witcher. We're also going to grab Produce Flame, so you have some sort of fire-based magic more at will than having to cast it directly on your sword. Then the last thing we want to grab is the 1st level spell, Charm Person. Magic Initiate allows us to have 2 cantrips in one spell, and Charm Person is pretty much the last thing we need to fulfill as far as the list of signs that we have. Now, there is one more sign that appears in the books, but it doesn't really show up in the games or in the show, and that's to be able to put people to sleep. And I was gonna go ahead and grab the spell sleep, but that would require an entire extra Magic Initiate feat or another multi-class, and I don't want to waste all of that if it's not even worth showing up in the shows or the game. Then at 5th level fighter, you would get extra attack, but unfortunately they don't stack, so you basically get nothing at this level. Then at 6th level of fighter, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up our Wisdom by 2 points, helping our spellcasting modifier. Then at 7th level of fighter, you get another feature from being a Cavalier, called Warding Maneuver. This allows you to help defend yourself, your mount, or nearby allies. So if you or a creature within 5 feet of you is hit by an attack, you can roll a d8. You can do so as a reaction, but only if you're wielding a melee weapon or a shield, which we don't use shields, but we'll definitely make sure to have that sword. Whatever you roll on that d8, you get to add to the armor class of whatever creature you're trying to protect. And if the attack still hits, the creature has resistance to that damage. You can only use this feature a number of times equal to your Constitution modifier. Then at 8th level of fighter, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up our Constitution, which is going to help a few features. Then at 9th level of fighter, you get Indomitable, allowing you to reroll 1 saving throw once per short or long rest. Then at 10th level of fighter, you get another feature from being a Cavalier called Hold the Line. So now anytime any creature moves 5 feet while still being in your melee attack range, you can make an opportunity attack against them. And if you hit, their speed drops to 0. Then at 11th level of fighter, you get another extra attack. And now finally, you have another attack to use because now you have 3 attacks. So now this replaces the extra attack that you got from being a ranger. So you can still attack 3 times per action. Then at 12th level fighter and 20th level overall, you get 1 more ability score improvement. And this is where I'm going to throw in a little bit of a curveball, because in the 2024 version of the Player's Handbook, they are moving towards having a feat as part of your background. So if you wanted to have a background that includes the tough feat, I would go ahead and boost up your wisdom here, maxing out your spellcasting modifier with all of your druid and ranger stuff. But if you are using a version of D&D that does not allow for that type of feat to be included with your background, I would definitely take the tough feat because you need that extra health to help you out. That brings you to 20 levels, which is the max in D&D, and you're going to be swinging around that longsword with style, and You might not look quite as cool as Henry Cavill would, but whatever. He won the genetic lottery. We're not all that lucky. If you like D&D related content, you like The Witcher, you like any of the stuff that I put out, make sure to subscribe because it helps this channel a ton. And if you subscribe, you happen to roll more nat 20s than if you don't subscribe, apparently. If you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where you can throw a coin to your Witcher, help out this channel, and get access to whatever the heck I can provide on Patreon, while at the same time being as awesome as some of these people scrolling on by, or some of the especially awesome player character patrons, the Holy 999s, Christopher Sams, Barrow Skrull, Zach, Felix Ulick, Dennis Bumgardner, Barrelist, Kevin Shirley, Zephyros, That Funny Man 57, Joshua Maynard, CGC 2014, Elisa Martinez, Panda Milkshake, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Carcat Kitsune, Decker Joint, Z13, Daniel Galvin, and the Dino 21. Then there's the Dungeon Master level patrons I actually play D&D with. Silas Uchiha, 696, T Brownie, Julia B. De Oliveira, Just Wolf, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Sattler, Conman ZX, Cybersiety, and Salvador. Then there's the one who goes above and beyond anything I ever expected, GameSteak. He's my god tier level patron, and he contributes way more than I ever expected. So a very special thank you to him. And if you made it all the way to the end of this build, let me know by hitting that like button. And I'll be here hoping to roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play as the absolutely outstanding Geralt of Rivia from The Witcher in Dungeons & Dragons.